All right, so hi everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Zev. I'm the VP of Marketing and Corporate Strategy at Niagara Networks. I'm joined by John Cardani Trollinger, the Senior Director of Cybersecurity Solutions Marketing at Accedian, and James Hanson, the Global Director of Business Development and Technology Alliance at Niagara Networks. In terms of the webinar flow, please feel free to post any questions you have in the chat area. We'll answer your questions at the end of this session. Before we start, so we'll do like quick 60 seconds on both companies. So I'll start from Niagara, and John will introduce Accedian. So Niagara Networks, the company was founded in 2017. We're self-funded and owned by Interface Master Technologies, our parent company that is active over 20 years. We're based out of the Silicon Valley and develop locally our entire range of network visibility solutions. We have over 300 customers that span multinational service providers, large enterprises, and government agencies. And another important fact that I would like to mention, given the fact of this joint webinar with Accedian, is that our Technology Alliance program expanded substantially over the years, and we have over 25 cybersecurity and networking vendors that integrate our visibility solution in mission-critical projects. Our solution are typically deployed in core networks as a mediation layer between networks and cybersecurity tools to help NetSec operations with packet data visibility and network intelligence. And obviously, you can visit our website and LinkedIn page to discover more. John, go ahead for Accedian.
Hey there, thank you very much. As mentioned, my name is John Trollinger. Accedian, just to give you a little snapshot of who Accedian is, we like to say that Accedian is the largest small company you've never heard of. We've been around for about 17 plus years, 18 years now. And we are pretty much the leader in performance analytics and end user experience solutions, or that's what we like to say. And basically we provide our customers, which we're in, some of the most complex networks, service provider and telco in the world globally. And we provide our customers with the ability to assure their digital infrastructure and really unlock the full productivity of their users. We have, within the past about year, launched a network detection and response solution based basically off of the rich data that we were already organically receiving. It was a natural progression for us because we were able to see deeply into our customers' networks. So I joined for that reason, and we'll be talking a little bit about NDR today as well. But that's who Accedian is. We're based out of Montreal, but we are global in France and throughout, and also we have a presence in Asia Pacific. So that's Accedian, and thank you for welcoming me to the call.
Excellent. All right, so Jim, I think we can start.
Again, I think we'll go in here.
So Jim, I introduced myself. You might want to introduce yourself too.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were doing the company overview. So, all right. Well, my name's James Hanson. I'm the Global Director of Business Development and Technology Alliances here at Niagara Networks. Joining the company about a little over a year ago. Before that, I've been a field SE for the last 30 years, supporting many of the NDR vendors, APM, NPM. So when the opportunity to join Niagara as part of Business Development and Technology Alliance to align and create our partner ecosystem and bring in companies like Accedian. It was a great opportunity. Great to be here. And, this is a culmination of about 6 months of working with Accedian to bring this joint solution together. So I'm very excited about it. I'm sure John is as well. And
Absolutely.
we're excited to talk to you about it today.
Yeah, absolutely. It is exciting. This is a great partnership that we're very proud of. So I'll shut up and let you start.
No, that's it for me. If that you've got the first part of the agenda, if you want to go into the CIA Triad, I know I'm looking forward to hearing a lot more about it.
Right. And then we're going to talk to cyber in healthcare a little bit about that. You know, I'm assuming, you know, there are a lot of us on this call today. Some of us have healthcare backgrounds. Some of us are just looking more for security. But let's talk about the CIA Triad. Talk a little bit about, you know, the current landscape for healthcare and why that's important. We'll talk about and we'll bring them together to ensuring and protecting the CIA Triad. And then we'll talk about, you know, we'll basically make the case for both NDR and observability that Niagara, the solution that Niagara and Accedian together can help provide with. So you want to go ahead to go to the next slide. So let's define CIA Triad or AIC, because CIA is very close to a government institution, right? So what is CIA? So CIA stands for confidentiality, availability, and integrity. And that's really important when we look at, you know, HIPAA, because sort of HIPAA is our guiding oracle for all things healthcare, specifically when it comes to regulation and security, right? And in HIPAA, it's very defined that HIPAA requires entities or organizations, healthcare organizations, to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of all of their, you know, electronic personal healthcare information that they either create, receive, maintain, or transmit. So it's very specific. There's no wiggle room here about what organizations are required to do for regulatory compliance. And then it goes deeper into you know, what does that mean? Well, you know, protect and identify against reasonably anticipated threats. So a way to do that, you know, protect against reasonably anticipated impermissible user disclosure. So basically making sure that the right people have access to the right documents and the wrong people don't, right? And then ensuring that the workforce throughout the organization understands these and understands them well enough to be able to, you know, maintain the quality of security throughout their day-to-day jobs, right? And that's the AIC or CIA Triad, specifically as it relates to healthcare. Did you want to add anything here, Jim, to that?
Not at this point.
Okay, will do. I'll ask often.
I appreciate it. I will chime in, obviously.
Yep. The joy of remote webinars, right? So, you know, it's important to level set. You know, I think those of us or those who are in healthcare are very well aware of the challenges that they face, because these challenges are not just in healthcare, but they're for security, you know, across the board, but they're affecting healthcare mainly because, you know, hackers and attackers and threat actors go where there's the most money or they can cause the most damage, and healthcare is a huge opportunity for them, especially when we start talking about things like, you know, personal health records and the information that can be gleaned off of that for identity theft, or we're talking about, you know, ransomware and the large amount of money that's in healthcare that is a huge opportunity. But also down to just disruption. So now that, you know, we're doing this virtual webinar, you know, more healthcare providers have moved to quality of care platforms where, you know, an aggregation of medical records are needed for a particular healthcare provider. If they're doing, say, for example, if I'm, you know, doing a telehealth call with my practitioner, right? They're going to need to know what are my healthcare records that are going to come from many different places. So ensuring that quality of care is also important. And why is that important? It's because of the security challenges that they're facing, that all organizations, but it's specifically healthcare. So there are more attacks, 62% more year over year, right? That take longer to identify. And as we know, time equals money. So if the average is 280 days to contain a breach, we're looking at an average cost, and granted, this is of all different sizes of healthcare organizations, where that cost is in the millions of dollars. And that's really important when we look at the type of attacks that are evolving. And as I just mentioned phishing, or I mentioned ransomware, but that's, tied intrinsically with phishing attacks as well. But also, these attacks, we've moved beyond the threats that are, we still need to protect from the threats that are coming from outside in. That is a constant. But when we're looking at today's more evolved attacks, and going back a little bit, into the pandemic, but look at SolarWinds. That was a third party, that was a supply chain type of attack. There are third party attacks that are, the old mantra in security, that you're only as secure as to whom you are connected, right? So, if you look at something as simplistic, and we always go back to this, but it's a tried and true, analogy, the Target attack from, almost a decade ago. But, that attack was able to happen because an HVAC person had a compromised telephone that allowed hackers to get into the network. There was another similar attack about 3 years ago to a law firm in New York City that, they held all the contracts for like Lady Gaga and Elton John. And when it was a ransomware attack. And when when the law firm wasn't paying, they started posting contracts online for some of their largest clients. And then bringing this back to healthcare, there was a recent attack with a ransomware in Germany, where they just turned off their electricity and people died. So the threat has become very real. It's not just about money, it's life or death. And then organizations are faced with, budget and resource issues. They don't have, they may not have the luxury or budget to hire the type of expertise that's really able to go in and look deeply into the traffic that's in the network, relying on the perimeter security, but looking deeply into it, that traffic, and identify what's a real threat from what's just, either a false positive or traffic. So that's the challenges in healthcare.
And one thing I'd like to add on that, John, is something that I've noticed is, the HIPAA requirements, the CIA Triad, it applies to every medical situation, hospital, regardless of whether you're a large hospital or a small. So, even though the smaller hospitals, they are, as you just mentioned, the lack of budget doesn't allow them to necessarily implement more robust security. They're trying to do this with perimeter. So because they're smaller, the hackers are smart. They're going to target the smaller hospitals that have the same data, but may not have the same protection.
Oh, absolutely. And that brings up like retaining talent. Healthcare organizations only have certain amounts of budgets. Look at how many people go to work for vendors. So many people work in, say, public environments. So, being able to retain that talent and afford them is also really important. And also,
very true.
You also brought up the hackers, going where they know, if we have access to HIPAA requirements, you can guarantee that the people who are attacking also have access to HIPAA requirements to know what's been implemented, right?
Probably better than us.
Probably better than us, right? So that was the great points. Thank you. That was security challenges. There's also healthcare security imperatives, and Jim and I've separated these out because there's a difference between the challenges you're faced with and just like business requirements and imperatives that need to be identified and managed. And those can be really broken down into sort of three buckets. And the first is, digital transformation. Just in general, we need to do, my organization, my healthcare organization needs to be able to do more and advance and evolve to, be more profitable, be more efficient, be more effective, increase our, retention of our customers, of patients, et cetera. So digital transformation, moving to the cloud and hybrid networks, as more devices become, connected, making sure that the Internet of Things are protected. And in healthcare environments, usually those Internet of Things are on a separate network, but how secure is that network? Or an EHR systems to be able to get, electronic health records, which we already talked about. Then there's compliance and privacy, which we just talked about, HIPAA. So I don't think there's any revelations we can add to that we haven't already. But then hugely important is cyber insurance, because more organizations are, beginning to purchase cyber insurance. Governmental organizations are requiring that cyber insurance is being purchased, and the insurance providers are either increasing premiums or reducing coverage or not providing coverage unless there are certain measures or approach, a security policy has been put in place, or certain security technology has been put in place that can guarantee that there are, steps being made so that, at Jim's point earlier about, the hackers knowing these smaller healthcare organizations may not have the budget, they're not may not be, insured if they don't put in place certain measures, which could be really expensive. Is that what you were mentioning earlier as well, Jim?
It is. It falls in that line with that. I've talked to Medica that are either on the verge of losing their insurance because they've changed the requirements and they're not able to meet them. Or they're, as you said, if they're not able to meet that, then they end up with sort of increased premiums to be able to get around that. So either way, it's not a good situation if you cannot provide what the insurer needs.
Yep, absolutely. But there's good news, and we're here to help. So let's go. Let's talk a little bit now that we understand the challenges healthcare organizations face, some of their imperatives. We all agreed on this. I don't think this has been huge news for most of us on this call, but it's it's important to level set so we are all on the same. We start from the same starting point. So it's great to know what the CIA Triad is. It's great to understand what the challenges are, but what are some strategies that can be used to be able to protect, ensure and protect the CIA Triad? And we can look at these individually. So confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So from a confidentiality perspective, first of all, understanding the risks and knowing what those are going to be so that there can be a very strategic approach to implementing, tools, people, processes, and tools to be able to ensure and protect confidentiality. You remember we said confidentiality is making sure that the patient healthcare information is protected from being stolen by somebody and used for, say, identity theft, right? Making sure that there are access controls and authentications in place, making sure that there's some sort of data loss protection or encryption in place to protect the records as they're in transit or where they sit on a server, for example. Ensuring integrity, so making sure that the data that is on the network is valid and verified to the people who are accessing it, right? That there's system and file integrity monitoring 24/7 to make sure that there's not some sort of malicious activity trying to access that data, and then identifying that in a method that is going to be understandable, especially when we go back to limited resources. It's great to be able to shoot up a bunch of alarms when there's anomalous activity, but do I have the ability to really know that that's not a false positive, that this is something, a malicious actor is trying to do something that is affecting the integrity of the data that I have on my network? And then availability, do I have access? Do I have, do I know where my vulnerabilities exists? Do I have redundancy or systems or fault tolerant systems set up? Do I have an incident response plan in the event that something occurs that could be anything from a natural disaster to a ransomware attack? And then, mitigating the risks. so that there is, access to healthcare records and services when they're needed. So back to my example of, let's say I'm on a telehealth call with my doctor, those are billable hours, right? So making sure that we all have access to those records when they're needed, so I'm not misdiagnosed or misprescribed when that's needed as well. Do you have anything you'd like to add there, Jim?
Other than the ensuring confidentiality is one of my key points, because the quickest way to a fine or loss of reputation is letting that personal HIPAA confidentiality data outside the door.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good point. Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, the imperatives. We talk about not just showing the problems, but here's some strategies to fixing it. But there's more. Like, what tangibly can we do outside of good policy and health and hygiene? What tools could be used, and that's where network detection and response really comes in. As a technology that's able to protect from the threats that are evading traditional perimeter security measures, right? That are allowing organizations to, simplify threat hunting and forensics, especially for those organizations that are finding it challenging to retain talent. And to Jim's point earlier, Jim was talking about smaller healthcare organizations. In my head, immediately when you think healthcare, I think of a hospital. But to Jim's point, the smaller organizations, there are lots of them, and they may have an IT team of maybe 10, 15 people, right, Jim? And out of those, maybe 2 security. So you don't have like a dedicated SecOps and a dedicated NetOps. So the tools that are put in place need to be simple enough to be able to be used, right? So what is an NDR? So NDR stands for Network Detection and Response. There are a lot of DR acronyms floating around these days: NDR, EDR, XDR. And just for some simplification to explain those, EDR stands for Endpoint Detection and Response. That's a tool that's going to look on the endpoint itself, your laptop or your mobile or whatever, that's determining that that is protected. No one's trying to, break through that. NDR, Network Detection and Response, is a tool that utilizes sensors that are deployed throughout the network, regardless of what that network looks like. So it could be on-prem, remote environments, in the cloud, in virtual environments. And it's just watching traffic as it passes by, and it's mirroring, it's taking a copy of that data. And it's only metadata. So we're talking about, HTTP, DNS, the lightweight data off of that. And it's sending it into the cloud for analysis. And then it's able to detect, we're talking like layer 2 through 7, right? So it's detecting attacks at the network layer. And it's really looking for anomalous activity. And it's doing that using multiple methodologies. So it's going to be things like, it will use signatures, pardon me. It will use threat intelligence, right? It uses AI and machine learning. So it's able to, map assets on the network. So it sees and knows what the network looks like. It's able to baseline to determine what normal activity looks like. So using all of these methods, if it sees that suddenly, as we mentioned before, if somebody's trying to get into that shouldn't have access into a server that has patient data on it, it's going to alarm on that. And it's not only going to alarm, but it's going to correlate those into incidents. Now, I'm kind of jumping a little bit around. That's EDR, and that's what NDR does. XDR is sort of a combination of the two. There's a lot of different definitions of these, but XDR is going to sort of be a combination of, say, EDR, NDR, and a SIM. There's a lot more. That's a whole other conversation and webinar. XDR does increase the amount of complexity in launching or in deploying and managing. So for our purposes today, we're really focusing on the NDR, the identification, detection, and the immediate response that we're looking at on the network layer. Jim, is there anything you'd like to, that I missed there?
The thing I like to point out is, one of the key value propositions for leveraging the NDR is 0 day. Typical IDSs that are signature based are not going to give you that 0 day protection. The issue has to be identified, the signature has to be created, and then it has to be propagated to everyone. An NDR that's looking at actual packet data, understanding baselines, looking for abnormalities is your best protection for those 0 day threats.
Absolutely. Great point that I didn't say, embarrassingly. So how do we protect the CIA Triad with NDR? And so basically, I think, as you know, I don't want to necessarily read the screen, but at the same time, when you're looking at NDR for confidentiality, really, it goes back to the, anomalous, activity, being able to identify that, real-time visibility throughout the network, no matter what that network looks like, the ability to, utilize behavioral analytics that provide context around assets or their behavior. I totally forgot one point that I see the bullet point on here. One of the differentiations of Accedian's NDR solution that I think is incredibly cool is we have an integrated honeypot, and it's more of a tripwire, but it's a lightweight Docker container that can be put on anything, including a Raspberry Pi, and deployed throughout, or a VLAN deployed throughout the entire network. And really, it has an attractive name that looks, attractive to a threat actor. And as soon as that's tripped, because nobody's going to go to it other than someone who's, snooping around the network, right? As soon as that's tripped, an incident is created. And the beauty of that is not only do our customers or you have the ability to go in and, get the bad actor off your network, but because of the months of data, metadata that's in our interceptor NDR, users are able to go back and see what the threat actor did. Did they, create a username for themselves? What did they access? What did they download? How did they access it in the first place? And clean all of that up. So NDR is great for confidentiality. It's great for integrity. And it's great for availability. As I mentioned earlier, the asset mapping gives, I kind of talked about all of these in general, but, the ability to see threat progression through the network and go back and clean it up if you need to, and then be able to just respond faster, right? So that's protecting the CIA Triad with NDR. Jim, would you like to add anything to that?
I'm about to, because I'm about to go to a slide where I'm going to just kind of delve into this a little bit deeper, but good stuff.
Great. Thanks.
All right. So, John, painted the picture of really the need for the NDR. And the key to that when we start talking about the NDR is moving from log-based, signature-based to really start building a security infrastructure that's based on the actual network traffic. So, really in today's threat landscape, you really can just no longer rely on just perimeter and endpoint solutions to adequately address the sophisticated and targeted attacks that are occurring today. Mm-hmm. So the need for network detection and response is, almost mandatory. And packet acquisition is crucial to the ability for the NDR to be able to function. Many agree that NDR is a key part of the security stack, but unfortunately, most people, the need to create the foundation for which your security infrastructure is built is not there. The network packet broker is that foundation. And what I'm going to be, really focusing on this part is building and having that foundation in place to support your security infrastructure. Because today's tools they require packet acquisition in order to threat hunt. But most companies are still relying on span ports for their most critical security tools. Relying on span ports, which are highly susceptible to port overload, contention, and misconfiguration, can easily result in the NDR not having the full visibility on the network that it needs. I have personally seen many organizations that rely on span ports for sending this critical data to the security tools, but the configuration for the span ports are not even put under change control. And what this means is that you'll never know if a VLAN was removed from your span configuration until the finger pointing starts. So, yes, spans are free, but just like that day old sushi at the convenience store, they're just best to avoid. Leave the span ports for the lab. And coming from Niagara Networks, the packet broker folks, we are pretty adamant that building a security infrastructure around span, while the most inexpensive and readily available, is not only is it not going to give you the protection, but it's not going to help you leverage the investment you're making in advanced security, such as the NDR. So, the key is to eliminate blind spots. You can't be secure if your tools can't see what's going on in the network. So by eliminating the blind spots and assuring you have full visibility to all that network traffic, whether it's north and southbound, east and west, or if you're now deployed in cloud native or cloud hybrid, this is critical. You have to see all points of telemetry in the network. An attack is still going to happen whether you see it or not. So you need to make sure you do. Now, just like all construction starts with the foundation, which is absolutely key to the overall structure integrity, your security infrastructure is no different. It starts with the foundation. The benefits of a security foundation anchored by a packet broker is not only going to ensure that your NDR can provide the protection you purchased it for, but it's also, is going to add to that ROI and reduce the overall cost for deploying that NDR. So the ways that gets accomplished, first and foremost, the security infrastructure, the packet broker, we're all about, you want to have 100% visibility and you want to be able to see every packet that you need for that NDR that crosses the network. That's the core component. The other advantageous items to adding that is, now that you are within a visibility fabric with the security fabric, is you have full control over how packets are going to be acquired and delivered to the tool. This is going to eliminate needless traffic that just further compounds alert fatigue, consumes resources on the NDR that can be used for threat hunting rather than processing extraneous traffic, and it just all around hampers its ability to do threat identification. So by adding optional traffic intelligence to your security infrastructure, you can start to groom that traffic. You can handle traffic that's encrypted. You can do deduplication. We can do packet slicing, application filtering, header stripping. So there's a lot of additional packet grooming features that are going to help the NDR be more efficient, reduce alert fatigue, and identify threats quicker. And then the final piece of that, and this is so key, is that once you bring in this packet broker infrastructure in combination with your security structure, you are no longer purchasing tools based on your network. You can now purchase tools based on your traffic. What do I mean by that? Just because you have a 40 gig network doesn't mean you need to go out and buy 40 gig tools. What is the actual traffic that you need to see? So just because you move from 10 to 40 gig, did your traffic jump from 10 to 40 gig? Probably not. You're probably still running 8, 9 gig, which through traffic aggregation and filtering, we can easily maintain the traffic that the NDR needs, or we can add load balancing. So there's a lot of functionality when you start thinking about how you deploy security tools in your infrastructure when you're in control of the traffic and you're not just matching speeds and feeds. And just finally, I just want to say, given the need for the NDR to be part of that network telemetry, being able to see all traffic on the network, all points of ingress, egress on the network, whether they're north and south, east, west, is very important. I think John's painted a great picture of why the NDR is crucial to be able to protect the CIA Triad. And this is why Accedian and Niagara partnered together to combine packet acquisitions with Accedian Interceptor so that we can deliver a complete solution that allows you to maintain the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of that CIA Triad. That's it for me. I want to thank everyone for attending. We've got a slide for getting more information. I'll let John
actually
wrap up as well.
We have a couple of questions from the audience,
Okay.
so we'll just tackle it as well.
Okay.
By the way,
great.
I think you covered it very nicely, Jim. Given the fact that again you might have the best security stack, but if the data or the packet data is invisible, it doesn't matter. So I think it's with that said, basically a couple of
I'd like to add.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
just wanted to add real quick to that. Jim, really, I think we all can agree. The simplification, visibility, and control at the end of the day is what is going to allow for security. And when we talk about efficiencies, we're talking about speed. The ability to deploy, the ability to make the tools we already buy. It seems like security, Jim, I'm sure you can attest to this in talking to lots of customers. It seems like security spend is endless. I mean, as soon as something is, a solution is delivered that's going to be able to protect from something, a new type of threat is out there that needs to be protected from, right?
It is, and it's a great point that everybody jumps to the tool, and working for a company like Niagara, where I say we're plumbing, we're infrastructure. It's not sexy. It's not what people are focused on. Right. Nobody says, "Hey, we need a packet broker." They're going for the security. So we're not sexy. We're critical. I think of us. The best analogy is plumbing. Everybody loves the fancy faucet in the kitchen and your toilets, but nobody says, "Boy, I sure wish I had a 2 1/4 polyvinyl PVC pipe."
That is such a great bracket.
So, but we're that 2 1/4 polyvinyl pipe. So,
well, and you can read more. Everybody can read more about this great solution that is, I think together very sexy. Accedian and Niagara Networks together to protect from tomorrow's threats today using their packet broker, and our NDR solution is located on their niagaranetworks.com website. You can download that today. And I'll hand it back over to Z because I think I just stole this.
Yeah, actually
the questions.
Obviously we have a couple of questions, so let's try to handle it in a couple of minutes. First one, it was related to Jim. You spoke about spam, so somebody was, or at least it was specifically mentioned. If spam should not be used, what is the recommended method?
That's a great question. So if we want to get a way to ensure 100% visibility and also have visibility to all points in the network, we highly recommend taps. I know sometimes people hear the word tap and it just has all different connotations, but today's passive optical taps are solid. They're not going to do anything. The benefits to having a tap is you're always going to be guaranteed that you're going to get the packets. There's never any oversubscription. You're actually able to break out the send and receive side from client to server. So that gives you added flexibility of how you direct traffic to your security tools. But the key is there should be part of the infrastructure, just like any switch and router. They're pretty much foolproof. They're susceptible to the same situations that any networking gear has. If you pull the cable, it's not going to work. But other than that, they're rock solid. But if you implement your infrastructure with a tap mentality, you are building a rock solid foundation that's not only going to drive, the NDR, but there's other security tools that you'll have that also will benefit from having that packet broker as part of your infrastructure, along with the taps that are providing that traffic to the packet broker rather than relying on your span ports. It's going to catch up with you one day.
Okay, another question. I think we can. Yeah, why do I need an NDR if I already have IPS, IDS, or DLP solutions? So,
great question. I think Jim kind of covered that a little bit earlier.
Yeah,
Let's
in
just
fact,
no,
it
no
was.
problem. Let's call it. Let's define it very quickly. So on IDS IPS was traditional. So its purpose, it's been around for 20 years now, right? Stands for Intrusion Detection System, Intrusion Prevention System. The difference being a shun or a block function. That's the difference between the D and the P, right? It is meant to be a perimeter security, traditional perimeter security technology. It is inline, meaning traffic passes through it, and it's reliant on updated signatures that are updated on a regular basis. So it's looking for pattern matches. Now, over time, it's advanced, and there's, more vendors have created more, technological features in it, so it can look for, anomalous patterns as they are defined in the document, but in the technology. But here's the thing: the more of those features that are turned on because it's inline, the slower it's going to be, and it is reliant on other intelligence to determine what it's looking for. Whereas an NDR does use signatures, sure, but it uses other things like, machine learning. It uses behavioral analytics. It uses, threat intelligence. It uses signatures. It uses all of them. And then based on what it knows about the network, and it's within the network, it's able to, see the zero-day threats that wouldn't be detected by a pattern match alone. Yeah. So that's the difference between the two.
Yeah, and Log4j was a prime example of the difference between signature-based protection and zero-day.
Great point.
Great. Okay, I have here a smoke alarm, so we'll do it quickly. Last question: we have workloads in the cloud. Do we have to deploy tools in our VPC as well?
I'll start off on that, and I'll let John add to that as well. So from our perspective, there's two situations. So you can deploy the tools in the cloud in your VPC, and in that case, Niagara has the benefit of either leveraging our virtual taps along with our cloud native packet broker to support a full cloud native deployment. What we add as an advantage there, as opposed to, let's say, if you're in AWS where you're using VPC mirroring, we can not only are we not charging for it from a standpoint of the mirroring, but we can pull the data, and again, that ability to succinctly filter out only the relevant data to the tools is still a huge benefit to deploying in the cloud. But also we can, if you have a hybrid deployment where you have some workloads in the cloud, we can deploy what we call our virtual tap, and through GRE tunneling, send that back to an on-prem device and your NDR that's actually running on-prem. So we support cloud native or in a hybrid configuration as well. So we're flexible in what is your business objectives and how you are deployed.
That's great, because then when you add that to our sensors, which you brought up a great point, we don't charge for our sensors. You can have as many as you want, right? And as I mentioned, those can be on-prem, they can be, in the cloud, they could be virtual. But however you're deployed, then with the addition of the Niagara technology, it really is customizable to whatever your unique environment is going to be and how you use it and how you need to identify that traffic. So.
Right.
The
Flexibility is
they're
key.
great. Together, they're even better.
Absolutely. It's the flexibility to be able to be in control of the traffic and control how that traffic is delivered to your security stack. Very important.
All right, so together it's even better. So we fully appreciate this webinar. Thanks, Jim and John, and everyone that attended this webinar. The webinar are recorded, and we will also share it via our online marketing tools. So John and Jim, thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Zev, and
Wow,
thanks everyone
fun.
for attending. We really thank you for your time and hope it was informative.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I had a lot of fun too. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye now.